Thank you. Thank you very much. It's the first time I'm inside this building in my whole life. And I'm here to explain the curious fact that the 59-year-old professor at the Department of Public Health at Karolinska Institute was the first one to sell software to Google from Sweden. That's sort of strange. That has to be explained. So that's why I borrowed this title from Steinbeck here, The Old Man and Google, a short story. Basically, the explanation is very easy. It wasn't me, of course. A lot of people have attributed this software to me, except one person. And that was when I lectured in California 2006, and I had a very nice response, and people rushed up. And the second one was Larry Page, the founder of Google. And he looked at me, upside down. I was standing like that, looked at me, and then he looked me into my eyes and said, "Who wrote the code?" He said. He just had to see me on the spot stage, and this man didn't do it, Everyone else is so polite, a 60-year-old male, Caucasian, tall, white, professor from Sweden, medical doctor. You attribute a lot of things to them. It was my young son, his wife, and a small group of Flash programmers in Sweden who developed this. And I've just been going water skiing after them, collecting the prizes. And this is very interesting. And this is really, sometimes this is the core problem in entrepreneurship. Who do the work? Who gave birth to the brainchild? Who did the work and who gets the credits? Sometimes that's more important than who gets the money. Because it's really what innovation is about, and at that stage when you see, this was my brainchild, I worked on it, now it has to go to next step. How do we manage these transformations? Well, we did it to avoid all sort of conflicts. I took all the credits, and I didn't do anything. I was the one who got invited to Handels to talk. What did we do then? Well, as often, an innovation is driven by a need. Someone needs something. Basic research, sometimes, out of pure curiosity, we discover just completely new things. But when you go to more applied science, or you go to business, to real life and society, there's a need. And someone can't fulfill that need. And then they start to think, how could I fulfill this need? And this is what this story is all about. I did this test, you've seen this on the web, with the students at Karolinska. I asked them which country had the highest child mortality, and it's Turkey, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa, and they only had 1.8 correct answers, and that's worse than the chimps, who get 2.5. So it's a basic discovery here. And why were they worse than random? This was really discovery. It was when you do a research, you collect your material. First you see this is the outcome, you get a descriptive table, and you say, well, these students are ignorant. That's my first reaction, They don't know. They could have 5 scores. If they knew that Turkey had higher child mortality than Sri Lanka, they knew that South Korea was more successful, Malaysia was more successful, they would have scored high. They only have 1.8 correct answers out of 5, and then I thought they were ignorant. But when I realized, suddenly, in a split of a second, that they were worse than random, I realized I had a discovery. Difference between research, result, and discovery. Because you can't score 1.8, and I did this 3 semesters, so I had a huge number of students. Now, my confidence interval was 0.4, So I knew that they were worse than 2.2. And you can't score worse than random due to ignorance. It's impossible. Because had I not given them the question, just giving them the answer in form, they would have scored better. It means they had preconceived ideas. The only explanation for scoring worse than random is that you have preconceived ideas. So something stopped them from realizing that Asia had moved ahead of Europe. It's the magnitude and speed of change in Asia that is not understood, that is not taught in the Swedish school system. It is the arrogance of the West European global aristocracy that stops people from understanding what is happening in the world, or at least being delayed to the extent that the chimps are better. And I don't know if I have in this graph here. Yeah, I did the professors at Karolinska, and they were on par with the chimps. That's very funny. Yeah? And then they, when I asked them, they had this G7 mindset, you know, that there was a Western world and a developing world. And the explanation they gave was long life in small family and short life in large family. That's the difference. And I found very interesting that many referred to the problem of having had problem-based learning in school. Because when I asked them, where is Kazakhstan? Yeah, they would know Borat, but that's about it. And I would ask them, where really is Chile? Where really is Iran? Where is Tunisia? You know, several times students have raised their hand and said, we have problem-based learning. We didn't learn country by country. But we really learned the difference between the Western world and the developing world. And that was the fact that in Western world, you know, people were healthy and they just had 2 kids because kids survived. And the developing world, they had all these numbers of kids, but many of them died. So this was my problem now, was identified. Gosh, these young students came out of the Swedish school system with the highest grades in everything you can get. They got into Karolinska and they know less than the shit. That was my problem. How can I save them while there's still time? You know? How can I show them the exit? Because this is not something we don't know. We know bloody well how many children there are per woman in the world. We know bloody well how well children survive. The uncertainty is plus minus 10%, you know. How do we know it? It's not by registration or normal, you know, censuses. It's a system of survey of representative household that you ask whether they have given birth to a child or a child have died. It's called Demographic Health Survey. It's sponsored by United States taxpayers. It's done together with the best national expertise. It's transparent. All the data sets are free on the internet. It's just a good thing which is done. So we know the child mortality in countries, but not within countries. It's just a sample of 3,000 households. So this is stuff like we know. So this is not the problem. The problem is, how can I take this knowledge and bring it not just into the eyes, but into the visual cortex and then up in the brain. So they understand it and see that the world is not as they thought it was. You know? Because what they think is that the world was a little like here. If I would put this at 1949, more or less, when I was born, you know, I go for full screen here, and we said, we have to show the change in the world not by visuals but by animation. My son Ola used to say that you cannot explain the world in images because it's changing. You have to animate. And for centuries, the x-axis down here has been occupied by time. So we decided to go liberate the x-axis. And take it away, so we could show number of children per woman down here, life expectancy up here. Each bubble is a country. This is Russia, this is Germany, this is United Kingdom. Up here, see, lucky Sweden, 1949, no war for a long time. 71 years in life expectancy, 2.39 children. And down there was United States. Japan was sort of recovering. We can go very rapidly there. Japan had recovered after the war, and they were up here. You could really see 1951, we had a Western world up here. It is not that the students' concept of a Western world and a developing world is completely fantasy or wrong. It's just old. It did exist. And here we have all these developing countries. You can see colors here. These are the African countries, Middle East, mainly Arab countries, South Asia, blinking there, East Asia, blinking there. There were very few in-between countries. One in-between country was Cuba. 1950, Castro was still at university. Cuba was almost closer to United States than to Brazil, down here. I can enlarge this a little more by taking away a toolbar there. So how has the world changed? We wanted to get into the brain how the world has changed. Have these sort of, say, developing countries, have they got better health? Have they got smaller family? And then we animated it, and we can regulate the speed. So running it a little slow, I can run it like this. And you can see how health is getting better and better. That was the big leap forward by Mao Zedong. It went the wrong way. But then Deng Xiaoping took over, and things went better in China. And you can see the Arab countries were late in reducing family size, but then they ran on pretty fast, and here's the new world. This is the hit animation we have done, showing that the world used to be like this, two sorts of countries. Exactly as the students learned in school, that these were the Western world, they had long life, small family. This was the developing world, they had short life and large family. And that was what was 1960, and this is what is now. Swedish students have the view of the world that correspond to reality, the year their teachers were born. It's about the lag time we have.